Hi guys.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
Hi Alex. Welcome back.
Hi,
And you too,
Jonas.
William.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I think William was also off this week or out, and I didn't check Musu the web page lately. Did you guys update the proposal or?
We have not yet updated Jonas, so we have the email communication. Once today's meeting, based on the today's meeting's output, I will just update the proposal there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing we have on the agenda, though, as far as proposals to discuss the composition. So let's do that then. Just trying to get into our. See here. We are. Meetings. Give it a few more minutes so. Issues. Martin, Alex, John, William. Okay. So I think the only thing we have on the agenda is the composition service proposal. So, Musu, would you drive that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Good morning and good evening, everyone, and wishing you all a happy new year. Composition service, we started designing the application, and we are seeing some kind of issues, and to get a better understanding, we would like to bring up those inputs here so that we get some analysis on it and get a better understanding on the composition service. There are a couple of points to be discussed. Can I share my screen?
Yeah. We don't see it yet, but
yeah,
there you go.
I'm sharing. Yeah. So the first one is the list of the resources for the resource blocks. We listed down in the table below. Probably I will share it in the email later. It has a computer system resource. The resource block has a different types, and the resource blocks included like system resources, storage resources under the systems, and memory, processor, and other like network type of resources. But we really don't see any post action or anything to build a resource block within the composition service specification and schema. We would like to really know whether we need to, based on the resource collection available within the computer system, we need to build the resource blocks internally, or we are missing something.
But so the resource block concept is in the composition service, right? It's not already in the schema, is it? I mean, let's see if I can.
Well,
I don't. Sorry.
I mean, It is part, computer system is a fundamental element of the schema, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
So,
given, but does it have a resource block? Bringing up computer system. I only have the 2020.3 release, but I don't think anything's changed.
well, if you look at the URI signatures that are on this page, right? Resource blocks are just sort of, it's just the namespace, but you, within those resource blocks, you have different kinds of resource definitions, right?
Yeah, it's basically.
And computer system is just one flavor of a resource block. That's kind of how I see it. And if that's the case, then for each one of those blocks, there needs to be some way of constructing it and, you know, basically doing basic CRUD.
Well, hold on. So in the computer system, you have actions like add resource block, remove resource block, and these type of things, right? But you don't have the actual resource block.
Yeah, from our understanding, the add resource block within the computer system resources like add a extra additional resource block to the computer, like composed system, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I think that's where you end up with disaggregated components that are kind of aggregated into a something whole, like a computer system.
Yeah, basically after composing a system, when the system of type composed, we can add additional drives as a kind of add resource block of drive type or something like that, adding extra additional drives or something like that.
Yeah, so if I remember right, and I may be completely off base after 3 weeks of not thinking about any of this, a resource block can be composed of other resource blocks, right? I think that's the idea. So it's aggregational. So I would imagine that for each piece of the puzzle here, you know, as you create these resource blocks, there ought to be a way of dealing with the CRUD operations. And if that's missing, then that's something we should bring up with John Leong and other folks who are driving the work in Redfish.
Yeah, basically the resource block represent, for example, the computer system type resource block representing a computer system. Basically, it has just a link to the computer system resource, Redfish v1 system/1 or whatever the ID. And there is no post action or anything to build the resource block. So our question is like, do we need to internally, based on the resource collection, we will build the resource block collection here based on the other hardware resources?
Where did you expect the actions to build the resource block?
Under the composition service resource blocks, kind of a post call to build a new resource, and we will pass some.
But so the composition service, you mean the one that the composition task force is working on right now, is it? Or
yeah, I asked some questions, and like they said, like for the existing, like the released version of composition like service details, they asked me to raise it to the like Linux like Redfish forum so that they will get the answer. Maybe after this call, I will post the questions there in the next.
Jonas, remind me what we agreed to in terms of just building the composition. So are we building it against the new APIs that are being developed so we can be ahead of the game, or did we say we were going to build it based on legacy?
What we agreed on is that it cannot be RSD. It has to comply with a composition service that is out of Redfish. But then if AMI wanted to develop the one that is going on right now that exists, or participate in the work of bringing out a new one that is going to be rather different and also include networking, that was, I think, the choice of AMI to take. And so I don't know, Musa, did you guys go and say let's let's build according to the existing composition service that is already in the spec? Or are you participating in this task force and you are sort of building it towards the new one? Because that's why you kind of asked for mock-ups and stuff before, and you got on the MTF list to get access to those. But now it seems like you're asking why there's things not in the schema, and I guess, yeah, I personally I have very little knowledge, and John Leung is not on the call,
so those questions are perfectly fine, I think, as long as we are looking at the current set of interfaces that are being defined, because we can still change those if need be. Yeah. I think. Yeah. If we're looking at legacy, we are what we are. I mean, we're stuck with what's there. I don't think we would be able to make much change from that perspective. So that's why I was asking the question. And I honestly don't remember what we decided as a team to do in terms of interface versioning for composition.
Yeah, I think we left it open. That's my vague memory there.
So what it sounds like, at least, based on what is being said, is that we may need additional operations, and we may need to extend what's there today, which I guess would kind of drive us towards the new version of the API.
Yeah.
Yeah. The drive for the new version of API was caused by the, let's say, intent to, let's say, use the composition also for fabrics, right? Disaggregated fabrics. And I just want to state that there's this discussion about the resource blocks. To be honest, the RSD, when we were, let's say, looking at Intel at the constraint versus specific composition, we were implementing constraint because it gave us more flexibility. And for the, let's say, resource block based composition, it is best to have hardware supporting it. If the underlying BMC supports a notion of the resource blocks and zones, because the blocks and zones, this is just the, I would say, virtual entity, a hint on what could be pulled together versus what cannot be pulled together.
Yeah,
and then even using the current composition model, you can compose the system without using the resource blocks. I'm not saying we shouldn't use them. There's this flexibility that you can, specify a complete list of resource zones and blocks when doing the request of the composition system. But then you could also just provide the characteristics of the memory processor to have the, let's say, not specific but intent-based mechanism.
So one other related note here to what, to build a little bit on what Rafael was saying, there have been several discussions in the DMTF Redfish composition meetings about, what should be, how the APIs need to be invoked in terms of the information supplied on the call and on the return. A lot of those discussions are kind of, in my mind, as I listen to them, were sort of based on theoretical sort of implementation of something that would, leverage these APIs, not on something concrete that AMI probably has, right? And so it would be good for you guys to review that work that's happening on that front, because they're defining return parameters, they're defining all sorts of things, all sorts of constructs to enable, creation of multiple, systems, for example, at the same time. There are lots of questions around, how would that data be consumed, to what extent it needs to be consistent. There's a lot of these questions that are popping up, and sure, people on the call, have done work in the management tools for a long time, but you guys actually have something concrete that you can apply as a litmus test for that work, and it might be good to I'm not sure if anyone from AMI attends those meetings, but that's where I think we can provide some good feedback.
Yes, yes, Alex. We also joining the composability task force meetings every week. Mostly we'll listen what is happening and we'll go through the schemas and other stuff
Okay.
after the meeting. We'll follow up with them and proceed from there. And I'll also planning to raise these these inputs in the Redfish forum so that we'll get it answered.
Okay.
The other thing from the UI, ODIM side is we need to get some inputs from on item number 4. Already Jonas responded to it. This computer system, this composability, right? The node composition or the compose system call is posted to a system call, Redfish event system for composition. So ODIM need to support, ODIM system collection need to support that post call for that. So we need to work together and make sure that ODIM is supporting that.
In other words, the post on the computer system should be somehow intercepted by the composition module, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually one thing we never resolved is how so Redfish defines a single information model, right? It's homogeneous, it's not specific to individual services. So what does that really look like in the implementation space, right?
So in this new composition service, you are saying that you will compose the system by doing a post on the collection of systems?
Yeah, system collection. The composition service requires a system collection.
This is for a while. It's even an older spec says that computer system, right, which historically had the collection of the physical systems. Now it can accept the action of the posting of the new computer system of type composed, and this happens on the same collection.
Yeah, and so go ahead, Rafael.
But I don't think ODIM should be able to take that without the composition service being there, because a post on the collection doesn't mean anything outside the composition service, right?
But the way
right, Jonas. I think what Muthu is referring is how this flow would look like once the composition service is in place.
Yeah. How can we
go ahead?
How can the composition service make a post call, because that is running as a different service in the internally, right, as a part of implementation. So the system collection is exposed through different service or the aggregator service or any other service. The composition service need to talk to the system, aggregator service, to make a post call to build the composed system.
So one thing I just want to kind of throw out on the table, right? So one of the issues is that, in essence, a composition service is a factory. It's a way of dynamically building something out of smaller piece parts. But once it's built, it ought to be treated from a manageability perspective exactly the same way as a bunch of pre-built systems that have already been hard-coded or composed at the factories. So in terms of management operations, there should be no difference between the two. The fact that one is dynamically composed and the other one is statically composed, that's a detail that should not necessarily be visible from the overall operational kind of view of the world.
Well, there are some, for instance, a firmware upgrade. How would that be?
That's a good question, and that's exactly why I'm bringing this up, because in some sense, once I create a computer system, whether it's been composed or not, once I discover an existing computer system that has been statically created by a vendor, well, now I just want to be able to do the usual lifecycle operations. And if by some chance a firmware upgrade on a composed system requires further decomposition of that operation into smaller parts, then that's what we would need to implement, right? There shouldn't be this preordained knowledge that other management services have that might be collaboratively, cooperatively managing computer systems with the composition service. They shouldn't need to know, about all the piece parts. You know, I think we need to keep the layers of abstraction kind of pretty strong here. So what does the model, let's go back to the fundamental question we never answered, and maybe we really do need to dig into it. And that is there a shared realization of the redfish information model? Is there a data model encoding of that information model that is shared by all management services? And if that's the case, how does that happen? Right? So
what about the specific questions here from Muthu on these the post, delete, add resource block, remove resource block, and he's asking if ODIM has these features. The answer is no, we don't. But I think as adding the composition service, we will have to add those features. Like for instance, if the composition service is running and is installed, a post action on systems makes sense. If it's not installed and not part of the stack, it doesn't make sense and should probably return an error. So we need to define these use cases, right?
yes.
And then you were talking about system/capabilities. Those are not there. Is that something that is already in the schema guide today, or is it coming? Is it going to be introduced by the new composition service? Do you know, Muthu?
I saw it's already there in the system capabilities.
Yeah.
Okay. System capabilities API is already there. That defines kind of information about what are all the capabilities of that system. Like
of the collection, or
it's on the
collection level.
In the collection level, that is kind of like.
We don't have that today, I think.
So one thing we need to do at some point is to look at the granularity at which the capabilities can be defined. If we're talking about fine-grained capabilities that then could be used, exposed to upper layer, kind of upper orchestration layers for the purpose of placement and instantiation and whatnot, then we need to make sure that whatever's there is at least rich enough to support the kinds of hardware features that would be needed to be exposed, right? So this is kind of, I'm thinking of ONAP as an example of this, where the optimization logic for how, for example, VNFs are placed on what resources they're placed is driven by the capabilities of those resources. And, resources would be equivalent to computer systems here. So we need to think through that as well. What does that mean? How do individual vendors like HPE and others differentiate their systems to the upper orchestration layer so that the right placement choices can be made? Same goes for Intel, by the way. We certainly want to make sure that we have, and would be good to, this is why AMD would be good to have here, is that, we want to be able to potentially normalize what that list of features looks like, which we did in ONAP and Etsy, but never did here in Redfish and ODIM.
Yeah. Did you mean AMD or AMI?
AMD, yes, because okay. So the people who have participated in the creation of the spec for ODIM, for ONAP, and the kind of the incorporation of that into the Etsy NFV standards, that was Intel and ARM working together on defining what these capabilities would look like and how to specify them and whatnot, right? And then, there was a review in both venues for that. But this is also where CNTT is doing work, right? Because, part of what they're doing with the application profiles is defining some notion of, platform capabilities required by the application. And so my sense is what they're doing is much more abstract than what, ONAP is doing, but I think we would need to support both at some point. I'm not saying all this has to be done all at once. It's just that these are sort of exploration threads that we do need to kick off and kind of look at.
So this going back to this capabilities thing, is that, how is it attached? Is it, there is a collection capabilities I see in the schema guide, but is that what this is, and how is it used?
On the collection capabilities, the composition service will make use of the capabilities to like build the composition, like composer like system, like what are the capabilities possible within that composed system, something like that. So there is a relationship between the composition service. Composition service basically consumes that system capabilities when we build it.
Can you give a concrete example of what that would be?
Yeah.
Oh, probably I have to check with like the 1 second.
Because you have a capability object. I'm just trying to understand how it's used. I don't think it's implemented today in ODIM. So, and if, sorry?
Divya.
One second, I am actually checking in the mockups that capabilities is there. Just give me a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. So just for the sake of clarity, the capabilities I'm talking about are more related to hardware platform features that somebody may need in order to deploy an accelerated VNF or a VNF.
Guys, in case you can see it, I just presenting some capability mockup, but this disclaimer, this is the very old deck, so maybe it changed it significantly, but composing and computer system example and the capabilities are used here.
Can I actually share my system too after this one?
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is one of the mock-up that explains about the composed system. Like this is in the Redfish DMTF site. If you see here, they are explaining here collection of capabilities under the systems resource. Like Redfish V1 systems has the system capabilities that explains that what are the collection capabilities object. You go here, it is going to explain
what type of actions,
we are, and also like what are the related items like resource zones and composition service. What are the resource zones that are in this system collection for the system?
But there is only one system collection, right?
System collection is there. I mean, for the resource aggregator, there will be one system, one capabilities, but the composer that may work on more than one resource aggregator will be having like multiple capabilities that we are dealing with. That's what you are explaining, right, Muthu?
No, Divya, this is about the open source composition service. This will have only one system collection,
right.
Resource aggregator system collection. We are discussing about the relationship between the composition service and system collection capabilities.
Right.
So you are going in the right direction. So the composed system is having associated with the system capabilities.
Yes.
You go to the system capabilities, and that system capabilities are related to the like resource like zones based on the resource. There are two resource collections, right? One is resource blocks, another one is resource zones. These capabilities are linked with the resource zones, from my understanding. Go to the resource zone.
So I think I'm still trying.
Resource zones has again like capabilities.
Yeah, it is linked to the collection system collection capabilities.
Where's the enumeration of the actual capabilities?
You go to system. Maybe I go to systems capabilities.
Okay.
System collection has systems capabilities. Systems / capabilities.
What are they? You know, explode on power on, shut down. I mean, like I'm just trying to understand what the actual capabilities might. When I think of capabilities, naively, I might say, I have a certain, I have support for certain instruction sets in the hardware, in the physical hardware, like SGX, or I may have other capabilities like CXL or other things that kind of allow somebody to say, I have a workload that requires secure execution. That translates into an eligible list of resources that either need to be composed or pre-composed that have certain hardware features. That would be one example of a capability, but there may be others, right? So that's why I'm trying to understand the actual values.
So from the composability point of view, I understood like resource block limits. See, for example, here it mentions like minimum how many computes are needed, maximum how many computes are needed, storage, how much storage drives or whatever we can use, like that they are mentioning it over here. And also they are mentioning like here the links resource block required on create is true, update after create is true. So these are all the parameters, and this is actually there in the
Can you hear me? Because I was
This
is Rafał.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
So first of all, because I was trying to talk on mute in the past, the intent here from DMTF at very high level for capabilities was that for the computer system collection, you as a system designer, you specify the, let's say, capabilities, and then if someone is putting an intent to create the composed computer system, giving characteristics of the memory, let's say the processor speed, those capabilities which are implemented per the collection are the, let's say, a way for the service to confront the requirement whether it can be fulfilled or not.
But I have multiple questions there, Rafał. First out, what service?
The service which is, let's say, managing the collection of computer systems.
Okay, so if you have a capability on the collection of computer systems, does that mean that you have a uniform collection then, homogeneous? So you don't have different.
No. You can have very heterogeneous, physical computer system collection, but then you have some capability to create the composed types. And within this, let's say,
but what is the capability then? If because it's not going to be memory, for instance.
The number of CPUs that can be supported,
exactly,
or the number of cores,
minimum or maximum number of the sockets, the minimum or maximum number of amount of the memory.
So if I have a collection of Dell and HPE and Lenovo servers, and some servers are single CPU servers, some are so how do I set all this?
Exactly, and if you expose that upstream, then you can be really intelligent about what you deploy where based on.
But how do I set it on the collection if I have a collection of different type of servers?
Well, that's the question I'm kind of asking as well.
This is a very valid question, Jonas. I am not able to answer them. We should probably consult with John and Jeff. What was the intent here?
There was a discussion in the composition meeting a few weeks back where they were basically looking at, how do you specify a list of systems to be built and what kind of capabilities you can specify as part of it. And yes, they were kind of very basic things like, I want to be able to have at least 2 CPUs. I want to be able to have at least this amount of memory. I want to cap the number of, disks at some number. These are the kinds of things you can specify. But I think we also need to, and then the question was, so what happens if you can't create everything that you requested, or what would happen if you didn't have the capabilities to support the requirements? From an intent perspective. So these are the kinds of things they talked about. But what they never said was, what happens when you start getting into hardware differentiation, right? You know, number of CPUs is pretty generic, but in some cases, um, you know, there's one hardware platform that might have an advantage over another, let's say, right? And both could be, you know, uh, both hardware platforms could be sold or made available from, say, HPE. You know, one platform based on AMD, one based on Intel, and then the decision of which one to choose during placement might be, you know, influenced by additional factors that the orchestration layers have, right? But we need to be able to expose all that richness upstream so that they can decide what to do. So that goes beyond the basic CPU and memory and disk um, specification, because it now gets us into very specific capabilities of the hardware that may be required, not just for CPUs.
Because we have been looking at that as well. I mean, for instance, give me a list of all the servers that have DPDK capable NICs.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is not trivial. I mean, obviously there is some acceleration and these type of things. But my confusion is really there still, and I think there is because I'm missing something, and perhaps this composition task force could clarify that. Because if you set it on a collection level, then are you then splitting up the systems collection into multiple collections? And
that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I would imagine that, you know, how you create collections of systems, be they composed or not, that would be left as something that, you know, from an operational the client side would do, right? You know, you should be able to compose heterogeneous collections and homogeneous collections, but from a capability point of view, I don't think you want to tag an entire collection. That's just seems like too complicated.
Yeah.
Right. And then the question becomes, okay, if a collection is tagged with a capability, is it okay to not have it and still be part of the collection? Is that basically just a filter that says what's allowed in at most or at least, or, you know, how is it interpreted? Right. That's the other piece.
Yeah. Well, I think as a general guideline, Muthu, I think whatever we need to have inside ODIM, once we are including the composition service, we should definitely add, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be part of, I think, adding the whole composition service. We also need changes on the ODIM side. If you guys want to do those changes, that's perfect. If you want collaboration there instead, that works very well as well, I think.
Yeah,
but,
I need.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, I just think we have a little bit of a challenge understanding here. So
yeah, we need to like collaborate on that, and we'll work on that. From our understanding is that when we do a constraint based composition, and we will validate and identify the computer system based on its capabilities. But the problem here is the capabilities listed under the collection. So that's where.
Well, there are two problems: the granularity of the cable, the level of fidelity that you can specify,
yeah,
and then the fact that they're tagging a collection as opposed to individual systems. So, like, if I do discovery, what do I get back in terms of capabilities?
Yeah. So I know Martin is dialing into these composition task force. I've been doing it as well, but now unfortunately it's on top of one of our staff meetings, so it's difficult.
Yeah.
But we should ask those questions there and seek guidance as far as, because I think we need to at least on a fundamental level understand how it's going to be used. Do you look at one capability object per collection of systems, or is there something else, right?
Joe said, as a suggestion, it may be worth setting up, if we could probably quite easily get Jeff Hilland on the call, right? Who's already been in all those composition service ones on
Yeah,
there.
I think that's easier. I was almost thinking about John Haas as well. He's been driving a lot of these discussions, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he wants to jump on an ODIM call with us. But
no, but we could invite him along with Jeff Hilland.
Yeah.
Nominally, we should have a pre-meeting with Intel and HP DMTF reps participating, and others who are part of ODIM, and figure out exactly what we want to propose or ask, right? And what we want to push for. And then we can, start enlisting support in the broader sense. But to me, one discussion that we need to have is some of these use cases that were just brought up today. Would be good to get their perspective, like John and Jeff and others.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah, I think I think that might help. But so AMI is also on DMTF, right?
Yeah.
So you guys should be on that meeting, because
Absolutely.
the struggle we have here now is that we have limited understanding. Well, I have, at least, in how all this is tied together. So it would be good to flush that out in a meeting like that, so we can understand if we can go and start the development now, or if we need to hold off on some stuff, right? So.
Well, we need to understand two things: what it is today and what it should really be, right? Because, you guys have introduced a bunch of extensions. One of our goals is manage heterogeneity from a manageability perspective, and to enable that through the interfaces and to enable the right decision-making upstream, that, again, that may not be there today because no one has ever thought of that. But we do need to kind of work our way through that and define some of those use cases, and then say, okay, how many of these are really important to us, or what's the priority? Because I don't think we can.
So I did have some email communications with John Haas at the beginning of this composition stuff, right, when we spoke about fabrics, and we had a bit of interaction. I'm not against me emailing him and saying that we want to have a chat about him, because I said to him we're going to implement this as part of the ODIM project at the time, right? So I don't have an issue going back to him and saying, as part of our implementation of this, the ODIM project, great if we could have a chat about various things on it. And
that would be useful, I think, right? And we'll, let's bring all the right folks into a separate meeting, and let's just, kind of get on the same page, and then we can start looking at.
Yeah. So Martin, can you set that up? And Muthu, can you come prepared like you did today with some of the questions then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So
what I can do also, I'll work with Raffle to sort of provide some specific use cases that are maybe a little bit less, more specific, have more specificity in terms of capabilities than just CPUs, memory, and number of slots.
Okay. So when do we want to do this?
Could we use the time next week?
Yeah, the only thing is we have this thing coming up as well with no, that's fine. we also need to develop content for our event coming up, but I think that we can manage that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll try and do it for this time next week then.
Very good. So you would call Jeff Hilland, John Leong, and John Haas, and anybody on your side, Muthu, except yourself?
Myself, Jose, and Divya will be there.
Okay. Well, I mean, we will use this slot, and would we still call it the TSC proposal meeting, or because
this is our architectural discussion meeting.
Exactly.
Whatever we call it. But you know what we're talking about is architecture, right? It's information architecture.
Yeah.
So I think this is appropriate. I also want to caution us a little bit here, because the DMTF guys sometimes have a tendency to kind of, well, to them everything is a nail, right? And so we need to be careful, because in some sense we don't want to pigeonhole or try to, you know, fit a square peg into a round hole. If something doesn't work today, let's acknowledge it and embrace and extend based on what we need, as opposed to trying to come up with a crazy way to fit what we need into the existing model.
Yeah,
sometimes, you know, when I talk to these guys, it's kind of like, well, everything has to be done a particular way. That's it, right? They're not really thinking in terms of how the automation APIs are going to be used at scale, or you know, by different kinds of client systems.
Yeah, I think the right way to go about it is to present our use cases, and I don't want to get into a discussion with John Haas in how we are trying to change things outside, because we've been through that, and that was a little bit exhausting. Okay, so Martin, you will set that up, or at least you will ask them specifically. John, I think is. Do you know if all? I mean, John Leong is obviously in California time zone Pacific, so it will be early as shit for him, just like it is for you.
But honestly, the composition meeting is at 6 a.m.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it used to be. I don't know if they moved it now, but
still is, I think. And so the question, then I don't think we have much of a problem, because these guys are the ones that show up for that meeting.
Yeah, it's at 6:30 a.m.
6:30.
On a Thursday. So
half an hour earlier is probably not going to be traumatic.
No, it used to be at 6 a.m. and they gave themselves an extra half hour in bed.
Yeah, you're right.
So all right, I'll ping Jeff and John and them. I'll see if he's around first for Tuesday. I mean, you know, worst case, we'll get, you know, Jeff Hilland and John Leong on it, right? So
yeah. Well, it would be nice to get John Haas at least the opportunity to join, because if we pull the rest of the task force into a meeting and he's not invited, that would be really bad.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, the item number 5 here, I think I need to ask, that's a general Redfish question. There are two type of resource block resources. Under composition service, one resource block, at the Redfish view on root level, there is a resource block. I think I have to raise this one. That root level resource block, I'm not sure whether it is used by any other any other services. So I may need to raise this in Redfish forum there. And the 6th point is like the composition service, whether it is running within the ODIM stack or runs like outside as a separate service and consumes the ODIM resources as a client, something like that. Earlier we had some discussion on this. I need this forum to confirm where it should position the composition service.
Okay. Jonas, to go back to the previous topic first, I just, you know, started looking at something. I think we need to be careful here, because the conversation we need to have, first and foremost, in my mind, is ODIM related. John, for example, is not, he's working for Dell. I'm not saying that we don't need to bring them into this discussion, we do, but at least initially, I wonder if we need to get those companies that are ODIM members to kind of coalesce together and agree first, and then we can Jeff Hilland, for example, could then John Leong could bring it to a larger DMTF community and position it the right way.
I mean, you know, I understand where you're coming from, but personally, I feel that this is just one open source project having questions to a standard organization where they are actively and developing the next version of a service. So I find it very natural to just, even though independent of what companies you come from, but that's just me. I don't see an issue that we need to get our ducks in a row before we approach them. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, it's only a week away. You know, he'll either join or he won't. Right? So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but at the very least, it would be good to get Jeff, right, and John.
Yeah, if we get Jeff and John as a minimum, then you know that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Muzu, did you have anything more on this one for today?
That's it from my side. The item number 6 we need to discuss.
Yeah, but you also mentioned for number 6, you actually brought up a use case where you were talking about composition serving uses multiple aggregators, and in that scenario, would it not be on top of?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, we should go through those use cases. Obviously, I have heard different viewpoints from different people, and I'm still not sure where I land personally. But
yeah,
because I can see you have multiple aggregators even in a single data center because of scalability issues, and then do you want to compose across those, right?
Yeah.
Right. Anything else today? Otherwise, we can get some few minutes back before the next meeting. All right. Thank you very much, guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time and inputs. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, team.